Visit Elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.
Welcome to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, your host. And do you remember summer? After the polar vortex and the winter, you know, warm temperatures, sitting on your deck, grilling out. You remember. But if you don't, I've got three gentlemen with me tonight who are going to help you remember. Help to remember summer as we look forward into a summer of events in Elmhurst, Illinois. To do that, I've got John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber, Doug Beach from Elmhurst College and the Elmhurst College Jazz Band, and Tim Radcliffe with the Elmhurst Cycling Classic, and a cyclist in his own right. And gentlemen, welcome to Elmhurst Now, and I know you remember summer. And John, I'm going to start with you because you have the, if you will, oldest event that we're going to be talking about on the program, and that is the Memorial Day Parade coming up, 96th? 96th.
On May 26th. Hard to believe we're closing in on 100 years of Memorial Day parades. I'm happy to say I haven't been co-chairing the committee for that long, shorter time, but it is a great parade. It honors our military veterans of all ilks, all different service endeavors. It's a phenomenal parade. It's obviously the oldest parade in town, but it's also different from most parades in that it isn't about hoopla and cheering and loud noises and those kinds of things. It's a little more somber, and it's to remember all those who fought and died and protected us over our times as Americans.
Yeah, the Memorial Day Parade is you know, a memorial to the veterans and the servicemen you just mentioned, as opposed to the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which is you know, an opportunity to party and get out of the house and everything else. But going back as far as you can go back, but the history, I know you're a student of that. The Memorial Day Parade in Elmhurst starts right after World War I.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that it goes back that long. Actually, 1918 was when we can track back the first Memorial Day Parade. That actually coincides with the creation of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce, but it was a Downtown's Businessmen's Association back there. So they've kind of run parallel tracks over those years. I'm sad to say that we've had reason to continue to do the parade because we've continued to be in conflicts over the last 100 years. And unfortunately, during my time, since 1999, when I've been co-chairing the parade committee, we've had conflicts that have flown up during that time. My co-chair, Ralph Piccianio, has been doing it for 20 plus years. And again, we had conflicts in the early 90s that fall into the realm. It's unfortunate that we still have those kinds of conflicts, but it's still important that one day out of the year, if it's certainly not Veterans Day, that at least on Memorial Day, when people have a long weekend and they can get out and grill and cook and play baseball and swim in their pools and do all those kinds of things, that at least for a little bit, they sit back and they remember why they can do those things.
Well, I think too, there's two elements of the parade that always sort of strike me, and I've had the opportunity to do the parade on Elmhurst Arcana Town for several years as well, but not only the, if you will, somber, very patriotic and honoring the spirit of remembrance, but the fact that, number one, the first thing you realize is, and you touched on this, the fire trucks are not, there's no sirens, there's no bells, there's no clanging, there's this reverent silence. It's a different kind of atmosphere. And then you cited the various wars and conflicts, and episodically throughout the parade there's these signs stating, you know, Korean War from X to Y, and this carried by young kids, by Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies, what have you. And that symbolism is not lost on me either as I do that parade on a regular basis. Now, after the parade, though, there's also a military remembrance event in Wilder Park. And you're part of that as well.
I am, and I encourage anybody who goes to the parade, which takes about 90 minutes, 9:30 a.m. to about 11, so it's not that long a parade, even though we have close to 100 entries. But at 11 o'clock at the Wilder Memorial, the Veterans Memorial in Wilder Park, we do a ceremony that takes about an hour. It's a beautiful ceremony. We honor the parade Grand Marshal, and that Grand Marshal gets up and speaks, and there have been some amazing Grand Marshals during my time. And then I have the honor and the duty of reading the names of those military people who have passed away since Veterans Day the preceding year, as I do at Veterans Day from the preceding Memorial Day. And the music is great. It pulls people together. Understanding how many people we lose, how quickly we're losing them from World War II. I remember probably when I first started it was, gee, when are we going to lose our last World War I vet? And now we're already going, when are we going to lose our last World War II vet? Because the age factor.
It's not going to be too much longer.
No, the age factor coming in. And there have been times where reading the names of the deceased, there are more than a handful that I have had relationships with, and that always brings it home to me. I always like to tell one story. Mayor Marcucci and I were sitting next to each other, and we always like to sit out in the weather no matter what it's like, and this happened at a Veterans Day. But we could see the storm coming in, and we knew it was going to hit us, and they started doing the national anthem. And just as the singer said, "So proudly we hail," we got hailed upon by an unbelievable storm. And I expected everybody to get up and run for shelter. And what everybody did was they joined into singing the anthem even louder, and they belted it out. And so if you've never been to that ceremony, whether it's post-parade or it's the Veterans Day ceremony, I encourage you to come out and remember those in your family, those in your history, those of your friends and neighbors who have served us, and give that little tribute to them.
Now, Doug, I know the jazz band is a fixture in the Memorial Day parade.
Yeah, it's been
flatbed
there a long
truck.
time.
Do you have any memories of going down the streets?
Yeah, you know, it's always one of the guys in the band, and mine too. I think it's one of the favorite things we do each year. And it's always terrific to go down the streets playing, and you see people that you know here and there.
You haven't seen for a while.
You haven't seen. But I think for me, one of my favorite parts of that event each year is when we go by the reviewing stand, where a lot of times you're near there with the Comcast broadcast, and you have some of the service, probably some of those guys from World War I and now World War II, and they're up there. And I always make sure we play America the Beautiful when we go by there. And to see those guys, their reaction to hearing that, you can just see how much that means to them. And that, to me, is the favorite part of that gig for us each year, just to see that, you know.
John, memories of the Memorial Day parade? Or something specific?
Yeah, there are really so many that it's hard to pick out one in particular. For me, actually, it was when I would participate as a member of the Kiwanis Club, and we got to carry the giant American flag. The Kiwanis Club always served as the marshals for the parade, and at the end of the parade, we'd be carrying the giant American flag. Throughout the course of the parade, we would stop and dip the flag in salute to veterans along the way. And then it was that final pass by the reviewing stand, when you see all the different branches of the service represented by all the different military gentlemen in their full dress uniforms. And when you lift that flag and walk by that reviewing stand, you know you're paying back just a little bit of tribute to those who have given so much for you.
And I know we're certainly not the only community that honors veterans and military personnel on Memorial Day, but 96 years is, I have a feeling that that's probably not the case in many of the other communities locally that do parades or even special memorials.
Well, you know, even in Elmhurst, we've lost the 4th of July parade. The JCs were able to save it for a few years, but it's really hard to organize and run these events. And it was 20 plus years ago that the city reached out to the chamber and my predecessor, A.J. Tachi-Taronis and Ralph Pachanio, and said, we still want this parade to happen, but we can't get it done internally. Can you guys figure out a way to get it done? We'll help you however you need the help, but we need somebody to help us. And Ralph and Tachi stepped up at that time. And I tell the story when I got hired in November of 1999 as the chamber president. Ralph came in the first day, congratulated me on taking the job, and then said, by the way, did anybody tell you you're co-chair of the Memorial Day Parade?
Tim, you have any Memorial Day Parade memories or thoughts?
I do. I've lived in Elmhurst now for 13 years, so I've always been a spectator with my family, and it's always a fantastic event. This year I'm excited because we're going to be joining the title sponsor of our bike race, Superior Ambulance, who will be in the Memorial Day Parade. So we're going to have some folks joining Superior Ambulance and participating.
Doug, I want to shift to you. You've got, if you will, in sequence, you've got the next event up. I'm going to come back to John too, but June Jazz, formerly known as Summer Extravaganza, is in its 18th year. I believe this is going to be year 18. Let's see, on June the 14th, I believe. What can you tell us about Summer Extravaganza June Jazz this year?
Yeah, well, it's become a really big event in town. You know, it started as part of the college's 125th anniversary, which you had a huge part in. And you came to me when you were there and said, we're going to put on an event in the mall. I said, okay. So we talked, and we had Clark Terry there, I think, the first time, jazz legend. And we backed him up with a band, and it's been going like that ever since for the last 17 years. This will be 18, and we've hosted a lot of wonderful performers. Clark, of course, was there. Maynard Ferguson was there one year. Dee Dee Bridgewater has been there a few times. Patty Austin a couple of times. Simone has been there a few times. And it's an event that happens every year right the middle of June there. And we've always managed to pull it off without it raining, although we've come darn close to being threatened more than once. But we've gotten everyone in. This year we're very, very excited because we're going to truly present a legend. The great Doc Severinsen will be there, who, of course, people will remember him for many years on Johnny Carson's show as the band leader in the garish costumes. But a great, great musician, truly a legend in the music business. And he'll be there, and so will his singer, Vanessa Thompson, and also Byron Stripling, another great trumpet player who actually kind of helped me make this happen because he's got a good connection with Doc. And Byron has been a former guest at the Summer Extravaganza.
I was going to say the back channel story on getting Doc Severinsen.
Well, it was just a year ago now. We had just finished a jazz festival at Elmhurst a month or so before, and Byron had been there, and he and I were both hired to work on a jazz festival out in Phoenix together. So we both landed at the same time. Byron came off the plane. He said, "I've been thinking about you. You got to get Doc." I said, "Wow." But he said, "You got to get him now," because Doc's right 86 almost now and still playing his tail off. But he said, "Now's the time to get him," and so he hooked me up with the people to talk to. And then Doc, now, of course, you can understand, he doesn't want to go into some territory he's not too familiar with without having somebody recommend that, hey, it'll be a good thing, and maybe somebody that he knows that will be there as well. So Byron had another engagement and he got out of it so he could be here, and once he was on, Doc said, "I'm there." And so we're thrilled. and I think it'll be a great show, and I think, of course, his name recognition will be huge to a lot of people.
Well, and the crowds have been spectacular for
they
all of the
Right.
all of the years, even right at the
That
beginning.
mall has been packed all the way back many
We're
times.
talking 5,000 to 7,000
Yeah,
people.
that's right. Yeah.
Which would make it a little troublesome to cancel. So
Right. So we're hoping that our pact with the weatherman stays intact for another year, and we pull it off again.
do any June Jazzes, Summer X's, do any of them stand out in your mind any more than
Yeah,
others?
probably the one that has the most unique story to it is it's 5, 6 years ago. Dee Dee Bridgewater was going to be there. And we had just finished on Thursday night rehearsing our music. We were ready for her. She was coming in on Friday, with the concert being on Saturday. She was going to rehearse with us Friday night. I got to my office Friday morning about 9, and it had about 4 or 5 messages on it. And it says, Dee Dee Bridgewater has a family emergency. She's not going to be able to be there. So I stared at my desk for about 10 minutes trying to figure out what the heck to do. But I got a hold of her booking person, and he was great. He's in Boston, and he hooked me up with Simone, Nina Simone's daughter, who I didn't know. And she said she would come. So keep in mind, that's great that she's coming, but we have no idea how to play her music right now, and the concert's tomorrow. So she said, I'll carry my music on the plane. Well, some storms came in that night, and her plane didn't get in till 4 in the morning. So I picked her up, got her to the hotel, slept for an hour, got up, started looking at her music at 6, and I got the band together in the band room to go through her music for the first time that morning with no power, with a generator running upstairs on the main floor and an extension cord going down to the band room. And we ran through all the music once, rehearsed it as fast as we could. She came in and went through with us that afternoon, and we went up and played the concert, and the band killed it. It went great. So
Something about that adrenaline rush.
yeah, the guys just said, we're going to learn this. I'm not saying it was flawless, but it was darn good. And and I was very proud of the band. She was wonderful. She was so supportive of us, working through the music. And so to learn a whole new show in 24-hour notice, that's probably about as special a story as there is for that event. Until this year, who knows what will happen. But.
Well, and I can remember originally we faced west, and you played on the
Correct.
steps of Hammersmith Chapel, and then we finally wised up, and rather than put all the spectators looking directly into the sun, we let you guys look directly
Instead of
into the
5,000
sun.
people staring at the sun, there's only 20 now. Right? That's
right.
all right.
Yeah.
And it really works better. It really does, especially now that they were redoing. They were doing some work back there, and now we have that patio back there, so it really makes a nice. It's such a beautiful setting for a concert.
Related but unrelated, other music kinds of events going on in the summer, camps or?
Yeah, there's camps. Not so many public concerts and things, in the summer. But there's some camps. We do a jazz camp. There's a chamber music camp for strings and
You
winds.
can play at that, John.
And they're doing a couple more. There's a guitar camp now, at least in the music department. And then there was a famous guy named Michael Jordan who used to come there and do his camps.
Yeah, whatever
at one
happened to
time
him?
too.
I heard he got married.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, still, again, whatever. I think the interesting thing about Summer Extravaganza, June Jazz, is it really is a one-day Ravinia.
It is.
In Elmhurst, and it's being treated as such.
Right.
Right from the beginning, you saw, and they probably are, Ravinia patrons showing up with the candelabra and the ornate dinners,
They do.
and it's really
And they
really
come
cool.
out and mark their spots now too. I mean, I'm out there all day, and we're doing a sound check in the middle of the afternoon. So by 2:30, 3 o'clock, it may just be blankets and some chairs folded up, but these people have got their spots marked.
Absolutely. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back. And Tim actually will get to say a few things here when we come back from break. I'm Ken Bartels. This is Elmhurst Now. We're talking about summer, amazingly enough, and we'll be right back.
We live in some of the best communities in Illinois. We care about our neighbors. We work hard to preserve our quality of life. But there's something we forget about in Elmhurst. A river runs through it, and it's up to us to protect it. Our storm drains flow to Salt Creek, and that means our harmful waste does too. So try using fewer chemicals on your lawn. Avoid leaking fluids from cars. And grow native flowers and plants to absorb more rainwater. Don't muddy the waters. Do your part to clean up Salt Creek.
Welcome back to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, and we're talking about summer in Elmhurst with John Quigley, Doug Beach, and Tim Radcliffe. And Tim, I want to go to you because you've got the newest event that we're going to talk about on the program, the Elmhurst Cycling Classic, which got off to an absolute phenomenal start last year, its very first, even though it was like 5,000 degrees in Elmhurst on that particular day. What do you remember about the heat of the day and what effect it had on your event?
It had a profound impact, but what I remember was constantly looking for water. It was 108 degrees, I think, with the heat index, and the riders were wearing ice packs on their back just to make it through the individual races through the day. So the heat definitely impacted it, but the crowds were fantastic. And as the sun went down a little bit and the temperature dropped, the crowds built in the afternoon, and it was a fantastic day.
Take us back through how this event even came to be. Who was involved? Where did the idea spring from?
Yep.
That kind of thing.
It was a wonderful connection that kind of happened by accident. I have a cycling team in Elmhurst. We're an elite masters team, which is really code for, masters. We're older, more experienced racers. We have a day job to show up, on Mondays. And we were looking to give back to the cycling community. Every time we race throughout the Midwest, we're the beneficiary of somebody else's hard work. And we had grown in size on my team to the point where we felt we could give back. At the exact same time, Alderman Kevin York and the Bob Hull of the Bike Task Force had been talking about, could we bring something back to Elmhurst? And so it was Bob Hull that reached out to me. We started talking about the concept and ideas, who I'd be willing to work with, because I race a lot. I know what makes a good venue and who does a good job. And it was the three of us put our heads together and decided to go ahead and give it a shot.
So, but at the same time, in order for a race in Elmhurst is one thing, but a sanctioned race, a official race, a competitive race, how did that come about?
Yeah, there's two main organizations that are involved. Our Elmhurst competition cycling team is the local sponsor. So we're responsible for working with the city, working with Elmhurst College, because the course goes around them for the day, and getting the venue locked and loaded for a full day. That means we had to work very closely with residents. As you can imagine, the police and the fire and Elmhurst Park District, because we're right on Wilder Park. So we're responsible for the local venue, and we work with an organization called Prairie State Cycling Series. They are bringing to us basically a mini Tour de France. We are day 6 of an 8-day race, and they go around greater Chicago area, and in each city is a different venue. So we work with them. They bring the professionals, they bring the stage and the sound system. They're the circus. We're just making sure that they've got a good place to set up the circus, and we put on a heck of a show our first year.
Take us through the course. It started basically at the Wilder Mansion.
That's right.
On Prospect, and we went from there to...
Yep, it's a 1.2 mile loop, and the course, as you said, starts right at Wilder Mansion. So we rented Wilder Mansion, had to, and it's a beautiful venue to have food and beverages and beers and such out in the garden area right at the start-finish line. They leave, they take a right on Elm Park as if they're going to go over towards York High School. There's a great little chicane as they continue on Elm Park, and then they take an immediate turn to the north on Grace. They go all the way up to Alexander, and they take a right by the football fields and the huge parking lots of Alexander. And then as they get to Alexander and Prospect, right by the library, it's another right turn, and you're coming around and you've just completed a lap. And there's multiple races throughout the day. Each race is timed. So there could be a 30-minute, 45-minute, or in the case of the pros, a 90-minute race. And they do it by time, Ken, so that they can stay on track. And instead of saying it's going to be a 50-lap race or a 100-lap race, they say it's time. And when you have, call it 10 or 15 minutes left, a card counter shows the racers how many laps are left, and that's when the fireworks really begin.
I recall you or someone telling me last year that the heat reduced speeds 3-4 miles an hour is what I remember. Mm-hmm. Does that sound right to you?
That does sound right. On a nice cool day, the averages of the pros will be 30 miles an hour or more around a 90-minute race. They were off by a few miles an hour, I'd say, and it's just because you had to be smart. I mean, at a certain point, you have to put this hobby gone haywire aside a little bit and realize that we got to be safe. And so everyone backed off a little bit. Still very, very fast. Mm-hmm. But yes, we did slow down because of the heat.
And how was the course received by the riders?
They loved it. They loved it. It's safe. It's open enough. They love the crowds. They love the fact that you're finishing in such a beautiful venue like Wilder Park and right around Elmhurst College. They loved the crowds that were building around that chicane over on Elm Park. You did some filming over there for Elmhurst, Our Kind of Town.
Right.
And perhaps you remember the story of the team that won. They had it was Team Predator Carbon out of California. They had one gentleman he was at the back end of the pro race the entire time, and he kept waving to the little kids who were cheering him on. They fell in love with this guy, and they even went and they made, with some magic markers, they were waving his numbers. And so every time his entire team was waving at this group, it just got the crowd excited. And as it turned out, his team ended up doing a major upset in our first race here in Elmhurst. It was a big upset. And they went back and they had some hot dogs and I think maybe a beer or two at that block party. So it's a fantastic venue, fantastic.
Yeah, and going through the course, I mean, you've got the turns and you've got straightaway, and then of course coming off Alexander onto Prospect, there's a little bit of a hill involved right there, especially if you're doing it for the 50th or 60th time.
It doesn't look like a hill, but you get on a bike and you realize this thing is going up. And it's going up at the exact time you're trying to kick for a sprint finish. So it did make it very, very interesting.
So same course this year?
Absolutely the same course this year.
And the date?
July 25th. So
Okay,
it's a Friday.
A little later.
So it is a little bit later. We're putting some space in between the July 4th holiday, and there's a sister race series to this up in Wisconsin in June. So we're just trying to spread them out so people can recover from the June race and come down and join us in Illinois.
So why a Friday?
Why a Friday? There's a few reasons. Part of it was just where the series was. We have to work with Prairie State Cycling Series to say, where can we get a spot? Because we would like Elmhurst to participate. But we also thought Friday in the summer, what better way after work to go into the park, to get around Elmhurst College and to cap off a long week. Sometimes in the summertime, folks are leaving for Wisconsin on Saturdays and Sundays, or Michigan, or whatever short trips. We wanted to catch the Friday crowd, and it worked out really, really well.
John, you were there for almost the entire event, if not the entire event. What do you recall from year one of the Elmhurst Cycling Classic?
I think I was most amazed by the competitive nature of all levels of the races. So the pro women and the pro men are the last two races really going. But all throughout the afternoon, there's various levels of competition for people who are just starting to get into the bike racing and working their way up through various tiers. So they're getting faster and faster. And to watch them maneuver their bicycles at the speed they were talking, he talked about the chicane, if I pronounce it. Well, there was plenty of chicanery. That's not
curves.
That's not an easy thing to traverse in your car, let alone trying to do it on a bicycle with 40 other bikes around you. And that's why crowds gathered there. It was no surprise. And what I really liked were the groups of neighbors who got together and did grilling and cookouts and had pool parties in their front yard and had sprinklers going. And the riders regularly kept up conversations with the fans while they're racing. I love that kind of interaction in a sport.
Now, as a racer yourself, I'm always fascinated by racing of any kind when you consider the speeds involved, and yet at the same time you're inches away from another rider, you know, pedaling or horse racing, car racing, whatever it is. How does one get used to that?
It takes a special type of person, and it's a unique kind of race. It's not for everybody, because you're right. You're elbow to elbow. We often refer to it as NASCAR on two wheels, and there's plenty of guys out there that use the NASCAR terminology. You know, if you ain't rubbing, you ain't racing. And when you dive into these turns, you might be bumping and jostling a little bit, especially as you're getting ready for the finish. So generally speaking, they're safe, but accidents happen. I know we saw a few at our own race, but it takes guts, and you have to be calm under pressure, because it can get very, very tight in those turns.
Does one progress up the ranks? In other words, you start out at one level and you get better and you go to another level, as it is with many sports?
That's exactly right. In order to race a sanctioned race like you've described, we're sanctioned by the United States Cycling Association. You start at a Category 5. So if you just sign up, send them a check, you're a Category 5 racer. And after a certain amount of experience and maybe some podiums or some victories, then they'll bump to 4, you get more experience and more wins, then you get to 3. From 3 on up, it gets more and more difficult, because you can only move up based upon your success. And so by the time you get up to the pro Category 1, Category 2, you're talking about United States' fastest and strongest racers.
And it's individual as well as team competition.
It's absolutely a team competition. An individual may win, but it is rare that an individual wins without the help of their team. There's a lot of tactics that it's very difficult to see as these racers are coming by you at 40 miles an hour. But you may recall, if you stayed for the finish of our race last year, United Healthcare was the dominant team. And at the last 10 laps, they put all of their big guns on the front, and they drove that speed over 35 miles an hour for each lap. One guy would be working at the front, and it's just like NASCAR. They're drafting. He's done. He pulls off. He's going back to the bus. He may not even finish. And they kept doing that until they had 4 guys left with 1 to go. They just happened to make a mistake in the final turn, and another guy scooted through for the victory. But it should have been, their team just made a mistake, but it was very much of a team race. And we had it, and it's big in cycling. It was a huge upset in the cycling world, what we put on at Elmhurst. That was the equivalent of the Kane County Cougars beating the New York Yankees. I mean, it was a small team took on the big one. I didn't say Cubs. I hope that's all right.
New York Yankees. They're east somewhere, as I recall. Mm-hmm. How often do you race personally?
I'll race a few times a month. They're not always as high visibility as our race, but there's races at virtually every weekend you can go to of different types. Ours is a pretty high profile race.
So July 25th, June 14. John, I'm going to shift back to you, because the JC's Carnival, and I know you're not a JC's, but the Chamber is very much associated with the JC's over the years. The JC's Carnival was a fixture or a part of Elmfest for many, many of its last 10 plus years. The JC's Carnival is also happening in June.
Yeah, JC's will be on Park Avenue, north of the Elmhurst College campus, plus some of the parking lot behind the Mill Theater, next to the Physical Education Center, R.A. Faginall Hall, for those who want the name for it. And that's going to be the Thursday, June 12th through that Sunday. So there's a lot going on around there. And we're going to try and add to that mix this year. So the Chamber has talked to the JCs about potentially doing a pig roast on the opening night of the JC's Carnival.
So Thursday.
So on Thursday, June 12th, we'd like to run a pig roast from 4 to 8 p.m. To give the parents of all those kids coming out the first night something to do. So they can get a nice pig roast dinner and maybe a beverage or two to drink.
Right, and then go on the Tilt-A-Whirl. Yeah. Not a picture I want to pursue. the Jaycees Carnival benefits specific programs that the Jaycees select each year?
Typically, yes. The Jaycees use the carnival proceeds to be able to support a variety of not-for-profit organizations and charitable groups throughout the community. And so throughout the entire year, they'll be writing a check for $1,000 to this organization, $1,500 to that organization. They're not banking the carnival money for their own purpose. It's all to feed back into the community and help people in as many ways as they can.
A question for all three of you, and you all have your various perspectives on it, I'm sure, is what does it take to build an event, from scratch? I mean, everything starts at some point in time, but what does it take to build an event in Elmhurst, Illinois? Any particular factors that come to mind that you sort of have to have in order to be successful?
I'm still learning, but I'll tell you the two that come to mind are, number one, you have to have the right people. There's no way my race would have happened without Alderman York, without Bob Hull of the Bike Task Force, without the city's guidance, police and fire, a lot of civic-minded volunteers, the cooperation of the residents, and our sponsors, quite frankly. The sponsors were key. So we had the right folks who were able to help treat it like the project that it was. So having the right people is critical. But I'd also say that having a unique product, and I think we have a unique product. You have to have something that's exciting that people want to come out and see and enjoy. And bike racing is a fun sport to watch, especially when you're up close. But we have Elmhurst College to showcase, Wilder Park to showcase. Elmhurst as a town is a fantastic place to hold any venue, any event.
John, you've probably been associated with more major events in Elmhurst than anyone I can think of. So what do you think?
Well, then it must be me. I must be the common factor. No, what I will say is I think people don't understand all of the background work that needs to be laid for a major event to take place and then continue to take place. I can tell you, as these guys just talked about, their event finished and they immediately started working on the next event. So it's not like it's 2 months out and you go, hey, I'm going to do a concert, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. It's brick by brick. You start out that first year, you critique it, you make the changes, and everybody's got to have good people and good volunteers. That's a given. And they've got to be committed to what they want to do. But really, it's about committing to it in a year-round process. That it isn't just something that's going to pop up down the road on the calendar. That from the minute you finish it one year, you're already working on it the next year, thinking about how to improve it, how to tinker with it, how to make it better. And the uniqueness of these events, there's only one place you can go to an outdoor carnival in Elmhurst. It's the Jaycees Carnival. There's only one place you can go to a really great Memorial Day parade in Elmhurst or most of the surrounding communities. That's that. There's only one great place to see the Elmhurst College Jazz Band and a major jazz artist perform, and that's at the June Jazz. So the uniqueness, the great people, but it's got to be that year-round commitment.
Doug?
Yeah, all that stuff is very true, and obviously you have to have that initial idea. You have to have a concept in your head of what that event is, be able to visualize it, and then figure out how to pull it off. And then you have to constantly, I think once you've gotten that first one under your belt, I know what I'm always doing with the June Jazz or with the Jazz Festival, I'm always saying, all right, it's pretty darn good, but what can we do to make it better? What can we tweak? Oh, this could have been a little bit better. We can make this better for people coming as well as whatever the act is. So you constantly evaluate. You never think you've got it all figured out. As soon as you do, I think you're going backwards. So, but it's a lot of work, and like both of these guys said, you got to have good people and constantly be thinking about the next year as soon as it's over. That's so true, But getting it started, it's got to be that concept, and somebody's got to visualize it. and then they also got to know how to pull it off.
We've got about a minute, so what I want to do is, John, how can people get information on the Memorial Day Parade and the Jaycees Carnival?
Memorial Day Parade, you can go to the Elmhurst Chamber website, www.elmhurstchamber.org, and information for the parade is available on the Elmhurst Jaycees website, on the Carnival on the Jaycees website, as well as there's some available on the Chamber website.
Doug, June Jazz information?
Yeah, easiest way is, again, the college website, elmhurst.edu, and if you'd like a phone number, quick, 630-617-3515.
Tim, the Elmhurst Cycling Classic.
It's a simple web address, www.elmhurstcyclingclassic.com.
Gentlemen, no rain, comfortable temperatures, sunshine where appropriate. That would be my hope for all three of your events, actually 4 events. And I thank you for joining me on Elmhurst Now.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Scott. Yeah.
This has been Elmhurst Now. We've been talking about summer 2014. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Ken Bartels. We'll see you again.
Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.
This is no place for the Tour de France, and this is no place for NASCAR. But in everyday life, bicycles and cars do share the road. I'm Robbie Ventura. I spent 4 years riding with Lance Armstrong and the U.S. Postal Team. I've coached hundreds of cyclists who compete around the world, and I can tell you it's no accident when everyone gets where they're going safely. The key is to know the rules of the road. For example, cyclists have a right to be on the street, and people in cars have an obligation to watch out for them. Often the road is the only way for people on bikes to get where they're going, and some sidewalks are even more dangerous than streets. Finally, some communities allow kids to ride on the sidewalk, but it may be illegal for adults. When cyclists are on the road, they're supposed to obey all traffic laws, signs, and signals, always riding in the same direction as cars in their lane. Some cyclists feel safer riding against traffic where they can see oncoming cars, but that's actually more dangerous because cars have less time to slow down and go around them. People on bikes should also ride predictably and signal so drivers know what they're planning to do. Cyclists turning right may do this, or this. Here's what a left turn signal looks like, and if you see this, expect the cyclist to slow down or stop. Whether you're riding or driving, it's also important to know your place on the road. Bicycles should stay as far to the right as practical, but they may have to ride farther out into the lane if there's broken glass, rocks, and other debris by the curb or on the shoulder. People on bikes also ride farther into the lane on narrow roads to keep cars from passing too closely, or they might be moving across the lane getting ready to turn left. Like drivers, cyclists are supposed to use designated lanes if they're planning to turn. Whether you're in a car or on a bike, you should also use extra caution in key situations or danger zones. Take passing, for example. When going around a cyclist, a driver should allow at least 3 feet between the vehicle and the bike. More is better, especially for a cyclist going up a hill or on a high-speed road where fast-moving vehicles can generate strong air currents. On a narrow road, you might have to move into the next lane to pass safely, and that can mean waiting a few seconds for oncoming traffic to clear. Be patient. Turning can also put you in a danger zone. Say you're in a car planning to make a right turn, but there's a cyclist to your right or riding behind you. People are often tempted to speed up, get ahead of the bike, and make that turn, but doing so could cause a crash. If there's any chance you're going to block the path of a bike on the road or a parallel bike path, wait for the cyclist to pass before turning. How much time do you lose by slowing down and playing it safe? As you can see, it's only a matter of seconds. And when you're turning or changing lanes, don't forget about your blind spots. After checking your mirrors, always look quickly to your right or left. Another major risk is a car turning left into the path of an oncoming bike. In these situations, drivers may misjudge the speed and distance of cyclists or fail to see them. Bikes are smaller than cars, so they're harder to see and may appear further away. But some could be moving pretty fast, 20 or even 30 miles an hour.
And if the cyclist is going straight, he has the right of way.
Bike paths or sidewalks that run parallel with the road may seem like fairly safe places, but these too can be danger zones. A driver making a turn might be focused on the road and not see a cyclist traveling on the sidewalk or path until the last minute. Someone riding on a sidewalk or path in the opposite direction of a driver is even less likely to be seen. So in these situations, drivers should be extra careful, checking the sidewalk or path for cyclists or pedestrians. People on bikes should ride defensively. Watch for motorists making a turn and be prepared to stop. Another danger zone involves driveways or alleys. Drivers and cyclists often cruise right into the street, pulling out of a driveway or alley, looking for cars in the middle of the lane, but not for bikes or pedestrians on the sidewalk or on the right side of the road. And if you're only looking to your left for oncoming traffic, you won't see a cyclist coming from the other direction. You have to remind yourself every time to take it slow and look both ways before entering the road. Cyclists riding along parked cars are in another danger zone because drivers and passengers sometimes open doors. Whoa! This happens so often, cyclists actually have a name for it, being doored. So if you're getting out of a parked car, always look over your shoulder to make sure no cyclists are coming. And cyclists may want to ride farther into the lane. One final danger zone is right behind the wheel or handlebars.
You're blocking the road. I'm trying to get by here.
You have to give me room. You have to wait a second.
When you're on the road, conflicts can occur, and it's tempting to express yourself. But getting angry, hostile, or abusive doesn't help. And it can take you to places you never intended to go. Aggressive behavior can lead to criminal charges. Revving your engine, blasting your horn, yelling, or pounding on a vehicle can result in legal action against drivers or cyclists. The best advice for anyone on the road is to stay calm, exercise caution, be patient and courteous. Share the road, show respect, and always be on the alert, especially in those danger zones. When passing a cyclist, leave at least 3 feet between car and bicycle. More is better. Be patient when passing and when turning right. If there's any chance you'll block a bike in your lane, on the sidewalk or side path, slow down and wait for the cyclist to pass. If you're making a left, remember that oncoming cars and bikes have the right of way, and that bicycles may be moving faster than you think. Don't forget to check your blind spots and to signal whenever passing or turning. Be especially careful when leaving a driveway or alley. Check the street and sidewalk in both directions for cars, cyclists, and pedestrians. And look for bikes before getting out of a car that's parked in the street. Finally, keep in mind that you're not in a race where NASCAR meets the Tour de France. When you share the road, the reward is everyone gets where they're going safely.